Hello guys, I'm Mr. G. As these days we've been called, homes. We've finished watching up Netflix. We're bored. Maybe you want to do some grammar exercises. Today I was very bored, so I said, why not make my students happy for the day? Then, here I am. You're watching me and you can watch me all day long if you wish. Well, for those who didn't turn their mobiles or computers off just now, in this class we are to check conditionals. We have two kinds of conditional sentences. Some may suggest that an event or a situation is real. It is true, generally happens, has happened, or it is likely to happen in the future. On the other hand, they can also express an unreal situation because it may be imaginary or unreal, something that did not happen or is not likely to happen. Let's start with some examples. Alright, let's start with real conditionals. This is our example. If there's a health problem, doctors deal with it. Remember, conditionals have two parts, the cause and the consequence. Cause and effect. In this case, of a real conditional, in the part of a cause and in the part of the consequence, we're using present simple in both. If there's, doctors deal, present simple. Let's write another example. In this example, we're using the same real conditional, but in past, a past activity. In this case, we wrote an introduction. Before pandemic appeared, that's the introduction. If people wanted to spend time together, past, they usually went to the park, past. So we're describing a past activity. Let's write another example. If we don't keep ourselves at home in these days, comma, remember the comma to separate the cause from the effect. Comma, many of us, that's the result. Many of us will get sick. In this case, we're using will for the second part of the sentence. Okay, these two are examples of real conditional. Now we're going to see examples of unreal conditional. Alright, here we have an imaginary situation. If bats weren't so delicious, we would be taking our classes at school. In these kind of sentences, we're going to use the past simple in the first part. In the if clause, we're going to use past simple. Weren't. If bats weren't. Of course, we can use the auxiliary, affirmative, or, like in this case, negative. And in the second part, we can use a modal verb and a bare infinitive without the to. Now we're going to explore how to write an unreal situation in the past. Now we're having an example of unreal conditionals in the past. If students had studied, here we're using had studied, it's past perfect. If students had studied a bit more before in regular classes, they would have been, what's that? Okay, we're using a modal verb. And if we add this have, we make this modal verb in past, meaning its meaning in past. Okay, so an imaginary situation in the past, they would have no matter who is the subject all the time, have. They would have been the main verb in past participle. They would have been more prepared and less worried about online activities now. You're not prepared, right? I know it. Right, these are the basic structures of the conditionals, but we'll see a bit more advanced. We can use a wide variety of other patterns in the if clause and in the main clause, like these ones. I've told you before that in the real conditionals we have to use present simple or past simple. In this case it's also real conditionals and we are using going to. How come? This way. If we are going to go to the street, that's a conditional. If you are going to do something, in this case, if we are going to go to the street, we will need to use a face mask. Remember the will in this case? Going to, it's possible. This is another example of real conditionals, and it's as a supposition. If authorities close markets, they might deprive people of buying food. In this case, will is not only the option in this main clause. We may use will, but also might. But what about they could deprive people of buying food, or they can deprive people? This is another example of real conditional, in which in the first part, if you think present simple, if you think closing down tube stations will improve, what? Will and think and the same? Okay, don't get confused. The important grammar is this one. Think. If you think just present simple, this will is just part or a complement of the main idea, right? If you think closing down tube stations will improve the chances of survival, comma, okay, here with this comma, remember we know when the if clause ends. You are making present continuous, yes, you're making a big mistake. So simple. Present simple, present continuous. Can we use will in the if clause? Yes. Yes, we can use will in the if clause, but only when it's the result of something in the main clause. Here I wrote it the opposite. First the main clause, then the if clause. We can move however we want. We should not go to school these days. No comma, because we know when one clause ends. How do we know that? Because it's the if at the middle of the sentence. So there's no problem. If we have if at the beginning, yes, there's problem because we don't know exactly where to finish. So we need the comma. In this case, the opposite, we don't need the comma. So it says, we should not go to school these days. If it will help to lower the curve. You know what curve I'm talking about, right? Don't go out of your homes. I will tell you this now. Remember, not just watch the video, but write, make notes on your note. If you are at home, take a piece of paper or take a notebook and make notes. Write the sentences, because if you write, you activate something in your brain that makes you learn a bit more than if you are just watching. So write. If you're at home, take a piece of paper and write the notes. If you're traveling, well, write on your mobile with the app of drawing, make notes maybe, or just write the sentences. If you're not at home, if you're not traveling, if you're watching this in prison, with your toothbrush, write your notes on the wall, please. This idea is the same as if we write it in present simple. Helps. We should not go to school these days if it helps to lower the curve, or if it will help, because we're talking about a real future, so we can use will. Here we have an example of an unreal conditional, an unreal situation in the past, because we have if we'd, what's the D? If we would, or if we had. Check your notes or check your wall. If we had past perfect, if we had followed instructions earlier, imaginary situation in the past, it didn't happen, that's why it's unreal, is imaginary. If we follow instructions earlier, remember, it didn't happen, many people might have survived. The main idea didn't happen as well. Didn't happen at all. Remember, I told you in imaginary situations in the present, we use the past simple in the if clause. Here, instead of writing if I was, we're going to write if I were. Yes, we can write were. Teacher, can we write was? Yes, you can write was, but it's a bit too informal. We prefer to write it were, if I were, if she were. Okay, here's the example. If it were not, remember, we can use the auxiliary, in this case were, in affirmative or negative. If it were not for doctors, comma, because the if is at the beginning, many people would never see a dawn again. Thank you, doctors. We prefer to use were in the expressions if I were you, always use were. If I were you, okay, this is an example of an advice. If I were you, I wouldn't go to Little Caesars for a pizza. I think you understand, right? This is another example of an imaginary situation. If the government were to ban were and the infinitive were to ban malls this Mother's Day, it would put husband and children at risk. There's no chocolates, there's no frying pans, there's no irons, there will be no flowers, there will be no perfumes, there will be no purses. Write these sentences, change the words, keep the grammar, make exercises. Yes, I know, wait. Homework will be there for you. I know you want it. This will be all. Thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you love me, if you love it. And study, because maybe someday you will be the next Bad Bunny. if you don't study, of course.
¿Cuál es la siguiente fase? ¿Robar autos? ¿Nadar con vagabundos?
Goodbye.